pleasure to talk to one of the great hockey players in National League, Davey Keane. It's a thrill for me to have been associated through the best years of my life with the great players of the game, the great management people, and the great broadcasters. And what more can anybody ask of them?
Frank D. Selke, like Dick, you and your dad, the Selkes, such a huge force behind the National Hockey League and Hockey Night in Canada's success. So tell us first about Frank as a decade-long host of the show. What was he like?
Well, first off, I must say that because of Frank and Ralph Mellanby, I got my chance to be on Hockey Night in Canada, so I'll be forever grateful.
Well, do tell. What happened?
Frank was a great host. You know, Tom Foley lost his life in a car accident. He was the host of Hockey Night in Canada. The following season, Frank took over. A tough spot for him. He was a full-time employee of the Montreal Canadiens in their PR department. But Ron, I defy you, if you were to look at all of his tapes, whether he was ever biased toward the Montreal team, Frank didn't lack from confidence, and it was great that he was like that way for him to become a host of the show. He was a television or radio personality. You know, he started the Color Man with Danny Gallivan. He showed up one night to give Danny an injury report of a player that had been hurt, and just gave him. Danny said, "Why don't you hang around here for a minute, Frank, and talk, because the game's going on." And that's what Danny used to do by himself.
So when he goes to Oakland, is that why the job came open? So well, what do you remember about auditioning and getting to come on board?
Well, the first year that I was on the show on Some Come Back, Frank was still here. It was the last year of the old 6, black and white, not too many replays. And I was a part-timer on the show. Then he moved to Oakland, Dan Kelly moved downstairs, I moved into Dan Kelly's spot. The cards fell the right way for me.
So it was a real magic between your two dads. What do you remember about Frank J., his father, and your father's relationship?
Well, they go back a long way. Frank Jr. was at my 4th birthday party. It was 77 years ago, do the math. Because they were both working for Conn Smythe at the Toronto Maple Leafs at the time. And Mr. Selke was, hey, look at his record. One of the greatest executives in the history of the game.
I read where he had a room in the Foreman office, and it was the only one. Your dad, the legendary head coach, 16 Stanley Cups, didn't even have an office in the Forum.
You know, Sam Pollock talked about that till the day he died. But my dad never had all he had was a table in the hallway. That's the way the coaches operated those days. And when it came time to putting his skates on for the practice, that he had to do in the dressing room with the players. Times have changed.
You know, Dick, we were saying Rocket Richard had that big night in 1944. And you're just a kid when this all happens, but your dad put that line together, the punchline, so maybe a thought on Rocket in the 3-star night.
Well, you know, one thing I've been thinking back about the 60 years of this show and my 46 on the show, all the great personalities I worked alongside. All the hosts, you know, right up to yourself and Don, but Rocket Richard did the color one night with me. You know, we were sitting, and it was a night when Ivan Cordray scored 5 goals against the Chicago Blackhawks, and he was the first player to score 5 since the Rocket. So he was electric. I mean, it was, well, we saw it in the ovation. One of my 2 greatest memories of the time I've spent on this show and around this scene here was the night that I was the English MC for the closing of the Forum, when the Rocket got his big ovation, and Richard Garneau, the late Richard Garneau, was the French MC, and 17 years beside Danny Gallivan. Hey, young broadcasters like you would have given a few years off your life to work 17 games.
Well, I remember, I told you, I remember 20 years ago interviewing you here. I remember you calling the LaFleur night. We got to go, so I just want to tell you a quick story. In '77, when they changed July 1st from Dominion Day to Canada Day, they were really trying to get everybody to go on board with that. Frank Selke organized a tour in Northern Ontario with Foster Hewitt, Brian McFarland, and they had one Leaf player. That was Randy Carlyle. Randy Carlyle went with Frank Selke, Foster, and Brian McFarland to 27 towns in 10 days promoting Canada Day. It's funny, the flag will go out behind him tonight when the anthem is on.
And don't forget what Frank did for Special Olympics.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Let me win, but if I can't win, let me brave in the attempt. To the Chevrolet iDesk we go, and Andy Petrillo. Thanks, Dick.